Anytime you have mother goats within a mile of billy goats, you are going to have small kids in the process, and some of them you are going to have to bottle feed. These cages, you'll notice, have sawdust in the bottom. You can get by with cat litter, but you do have to have some kind of housing for baby goats. You need to have the bottle powdered milk in the freezer anytime you have goats, just in case, and spare bottles around. This one has brown patches on its legs. That's not bad spots on them. Outside, you'll find that hay works the best, sawdust works second best, and if you can't get that, you can go around your neighborhood and pick up leaves. This small building that I'm using for calves will also work for goats. You'll notice that heat lamp on the top. Not the best of ideas, but it does get them by. Sawmill sheds do not work. You need at least 3 walls to keep the wind and rain off of them. This one here is my first attempt. That rock wall you're looking at is between 2.5 and 3 foot thick. It took me months to make that thing. This is a bag feeder. This is the worst way you can feed them, because as you can see, they step in it and they get poop in their food, and then they try and eat it. And if one has worms, they all have worms, and it spreads disease. Really a bad option to go. Getting back to my first attempt at a good goat barn, you fill this thing up with sawdust, and what it does is it stays warm even in the coldest of winters, even with sawdust. It was something that does not really produce a lot of heat. It stays about 45 degrees in here all winter long, no matter how cold it gets outside. And it's also a little bit underground, and that rock wall is on the south side, so it absorbs all the heat, and it releases it all through the night, and it stays rather warm in there. It's just not big enough. This is the best barn that I've made. I've got 3 4x4 round bales of hay in there. They eat half of it, let the other half go on the ground, and what that does is it composts and it creates heat, and it gives them something to sleep on. It's better than an electric blanket. It's cheaper than using heat lamps. It's cheaper than the rock wall that I showed you on the last one, and it just does a remarkable job at keeping little baby goats alive. I have not lost a single baby goat this year, and it all has to do with me changing this particular shed out. I built it. It is a portable shed. It has steel beams on the bottom. I can hook a chain to it and just move it out of the way, and then just drag the manure compost anywhere I want to drag it to, or clean it up real easily. I don't have to go in the shed to do it. You'll notice the sideboards there are plywood. If you have bad billy goats, and you will run across a few, and about all the rams will do it. With sheep, they will bust out the sides of barns and sheds. I've seen a billy goat take out some very large oak beams, and you just don't think of a billy goat being able to bust a 12 by 12 oak beam, but they can actually knock them out of place. It's surprising what a large goat or a ram can do. The plywood is flexible and it won't do that. Looking at the hay, this is a better view. Goats like to drink their own pee. They like to smell like goat, and if you keep throwing hay down there, they'll eat on it, and there'll be fresh hay on top. If you keep the barn facing south, so that opening is facing south, so that winter sun goes in there, it'll keep the top of it drier. That way they don't smell like goat as badly. But like I said, they still drink their own pee, and they still roll in their own mess, because goats like to smell like goats. This one here is a mama goat. She is 3 weeks from delivering. And I know that date for sure because this video is a month old, and I am just redoing the sound on it. Yeah, she had a little boy and a little girl. So that's what a goat will look like about 3 weeks from. When they get closer, if you notice some of the sides along the side of the goats, around their back ends, around their butts, you can see their bones a little bit. That's what they look like right before they're ready to drop, within about a week or 2. So this black one here already has the large bags, but no little baby goats to go along with it. And that means they're still inside of her for now, or at least while the video is playing. That red bin is my first feeder that I've attempted to make. and I need to modify it because it is lousy. It drops a little bit of food on the ground, and I need 99.9% of the food to stay in the feeder. I don't, anything that goes in the ground, I don't want the goats eating. They also are able to stand up inside of it or stand up on it and poop in the food and walk in the food, and that's something you really want to stay away from. I have figured out a better feeder, but I haven't done a video on it yet. The barn that they're in now was an earlier attempt at just a cheap structure barn. I used wooden poles on it instead, and the wood, if you let it there for one season, that compost will actually rot it out. Here's what happens if you leave goats around apple trees. What'll happen is the goats will ignore them, and you think, oh, they don't eat apple trees. Then you'll see one chewing on one, and you don't think much of it. Next thing you know, they've chewed all the way around the tree, and about 2 years later, the tree dies. And it does. It takes about 2 years. The persimmon trees that you're looking at right there, hopefully they'll take those down. I hate those things. And there's the rest of my apple orchard. The goats are cleaning the bark off all the limbs they can get to. Bad goats. Okay, here we have a permanent structure where they just took 4x4 beams, stuck them in the ground, built a pole barn around it. Now you notice these 3 walls. It's called a manger. I spent thousands and thousands of dollars trying to reconstruct the perfect barn, trying to redesign a barn, and there's an old name for it. It's called a manger. They've been around for thousands of years. This one here is 10 walls on the outside, and that is your best feature. If you put the gates on at least one of them, you can put feed in there and throw feed in over as it's needed. You'll also, with goats, you'll need to have multiple places to keep them, because some of the mean goats will push other goats out into the rain and cold, and they'll die. So you always need multiple places for them to get out of the rain. Otherwise, one will bully the other, and eventually it'll end up dying on you. And no, I don't have horses. This is a neighbor's spot. I took this from the road.